name is Susie Arroyo. I'm 23 years old and I live in Pendleton, Oregon. Well, I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy at the age of 5. My kindergarten teacher noticed I couldn't keep up with the rest of the kids in PE class, and I would get really tired, really fatigued, because it was just really hard. I knew my legs hurt and I couldn't jump and run like the other kids, but it wasn't until I was 12 years old that I knew that how serious it was, and that it affected your heart and your lungs and your back. And I was sent to specialists in Portland, and they did some testing, and so they went in and did a muscle biopsy and found out I in fact did have a form of muscular dystrophy. And they didn't really know what pattern I would follow, just because I'm a girl, and they knew with boys, basically they would hit like their peak, you know, learn how to walk and be able to run, and then slowly decline after that and be in a wheelchair at age 10 or 12 depending, and from there decline on and perhaps have respiratory or heart failure in their early teens. In my case, everything was good up until I was 20 years old, and medications that I had been on for a while made my bones very brittle, so I had a spinal fracture, and that caused me to be in the wheelchair, and from then on function began to decline. It had been stable up until that point, and from then on we noticed I was getting worse and couldn't do my day-to-day tasks. And that's basically when I started seeing my heart failure docs at OHSU, and they decided that my heart function had gotten to the point where it was dangerous, and they needed to put a defibrillator in to stop me from having abnormal heart rhythms, because I had them in the past. You know, there's not really many donors, and it's really hard for people to be on a waiting list. So a, you know, artificial heart might have to be what keeps me running until then. It's just a temporary fix. There's people that last months in it, years depending. It was just really intense. So they put a defibrillator in February of this year, and I've been seen by the doctors every 2 months, and they've said a heart transplant is the only option basically that I have left. It was in the spring of 2010, and my phone rang, and it was a Portland number, so I'm like, oh, maybe one of my doctors, because I had recently gotten some tests done. And they tell me that the results were in my test, and I'm like, oh, well, how did it go? And they're like, well, the right side of your heart is actually getting stronger with new medications that we've given you, because I was always treated with medications just because they wanted to prevent complications from happening, and they're like, well, it's helping the right side of your heart. So I was like, oh, great, you know, but the left side of your heart is actually getting worse to the point that and I was like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, well, does that mean I just get more medicine? And they're like, no, you actually have congestive heart failure. And I was like, you know, what is that? I'd always heard of congestive heart failure when, like, older people, when they died right after it. So I was like, oh, death sentence. That means I'm dying. I'm not going to go to school the next day. And they're just like, basically, your heart's failing, but we are going to, like, it was just like, your heart's failing, have a nice day. And, well, I started crying, and my friends came up to me and were like, what's wrong? Well, it was just like a Niagara Falls had fallen, and there was no way from stopping my tears, and I went home that day and tried to act normal, and my parents were like, well, what's wrong? Over dinner, you know, they could tell that something was wrong, and I told them I was done. No more school. It was just a waste, you know. Why waste my time going to school when I could just do other stuff because I mean, I was done, you know, I was gonna die anyway, so. But, you know, I continued and got out of my, you know, depression and continued going on. They forced me to go to school the next day. They kept me going. School, the distraction of school, homework, and just, yeah. But I mean, I've gotten used to the fact that I'm not walking at this point. I mean, it's not a big deal to me. I'm good with that, just as long as the heart's beating and doing well. I'm okay with everything, because I've, you know, even being in the wheelchair, I've been able to go to college and graduate college with an associate's degree. I mean, it's a start. I want to continue, but if I don't have a heart transplant, it's not going to happen. Basically, I need to come up with, they have like an average, and of course every year it changes. It's $150,000 basically to prove that you can get a transplant, and that's a large amount of money, but I'm hoping that we're able to reach that goal. It could take a while, but I'm hoping to stay healthy enough that we'll get to that money before we get the transplant, yes. You know, in order to do that, we need to have a large amount of money proving that I'm a worthy candidate to be evaluated, and that's my story.